Dear listeners, a new day and a new story to discuss. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that interests me. Listen and write down what you think about this situation. I'm interested in your opinions. Hey. Welcome back to another mind-bending tale from our space. Let's dive straight into the whirlwind that upended my world. The morning haze hadn't yet lifted when my phone blared with Mark's ringtone, a tune that now feels like a harbinger of doom. Ethan, man, you ready for the biggest day of your life? He bellowed with infectious enthusiasm. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes, my heart a cocktail of excitement and nerves. Ready as I'll ever be. Just feel surreal, you know. I replied, my voice a mix of elation and disbelief. The laughter on the other end did little to ease my jitters. It's going to be epic, dude. Sarah's gonna be blown away. Just wait until you see her. Our conversation was cut short by the day's pressing demands. The wedding venue, a picturesque estate nestled between rolling hills and lush gardens, was abuzz with activity. Sarah and I had decided on a 2-day extravaganza, starting with separate bachelor and bachelorette parties to honor our last single days. The rule was clear: no seeing each other until the altar. A tradition I was beginning to regret. The bachelor party was a blur of cheers, laughter, and too many toasts to count. To Ethan, the luckiest man alive, Mark roared, raising his glass high. The room erupted in agreement, a symphony of well wishes and clinking glasses. As the night wore on, Mark's presence became my anchor, a constant in the sea of faces. You got this, Ethan. Sarah's amazing, and you two are perfect together, he reassured me, clapping a hand on my shoulder. His words were meant to comfort, but they lodged in my chest like a weight. Sarah, with her laughter that filled rooms and kindness that knew no bounds, was my everything. The thought of stepping into forever with her both thrilled and terrified me. The party eventually wound down, and I stumbled to my room, the world tilting slightly with every step. Collapsing onto the bed, the last thing I remembered was Mark's promise to make sure everything went smoothly the next day. Morning came too soon, sunlight streaming through the curtains with a harshness that matched my headache. Today was the day. I was marrying Sarah, the love of my life. My phone pinged with a message from her, a simple heart emoji that sent my own heart racing. Today, I would see her at the altar, radiant and mine. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. As I prepared, adjusting my tie for the umpteenth time, a knock at the door signaled the arrival of the groomsmen. Mark was the last to enter, his grin wide but his eyes avoiding mine. Ready to make a woman out of Sarah? He joked. But the laughter died quickly, replaced by a tension I couldn't place. The ceremony loomed closer, each tick of the clock a reminder of the life-changing moment ahead. But amidst the celebration, a storm was brewing, one that would leave my world in ruins. It was during a moment of respite, hidden away in the restroom to gather my thoughts, that I overheard a conversation that would shatter my heart into a million pieces. Two janitors, unaware of my presence, spoke of a scandalous liaison between the bride and the best man. Their words, casual and cruel, painted a vivid picture of betrayal. Frozen, I listened as they recounted what they'd seen. Sarah, my Sarah, in a clandestine embrace with Mark, moments before our vows. The room spun, and I grappled with disbelief and rising fury. The confrontation that followed was a blur. I found Mark, his smile faltering under my glare. Tell me it's not true, I pleaded, my voice barely a whisper. Mark's silence was answer enough. The best man, my best friend, had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way. And Sarah, the woman I loved more than life itself, had broken us before we could even begin. The unraveling of my world had begun, not with a bang, but with a whisper of betrayal that echoed through the halls of what should have been our happiest day. The sun rose on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, casting a golden glow over the sprawling estate that was to witness my union with Sarah. I awoke with a heart full of hope and a mind clouded by doubts, the remnants of last night's revelation still gnawing at me. As I made my way to the main house, the air was filled with the sounds of preparations. Florists adorned every corner with blooms, and caterers flitted about, a ballet of efficiency. The estate buzzed with anticipation, but my heart was heavy, a drumbeat of trepidation accompanying my every step. Mark found me by the grand staircase, his usual grin plastered on his face. Ethan, my man, today's the day you lock it down, he exclaimed, clapping me on the back with a force that felt like a betrayal all its own. I forced a smile, the taste of bile rising in my throat. Yeah, it's a big day, I managed, my voice a stranger to my own ears. He eyed me, a flicker of concern crossing his features. You all right, man? You look like you've seen a ghost. I shook my head, the weight of my secret a heavy cloak. Just nerves, I guess. The morning passed in a blur, a parade of well-wishers and last-minute details that demanded my attention. Yet, beneath the surface of festivity, a storm brewed within me, a tempest of anger and heartache. As the ceremony approached, the estate transformed into a vision of nuptial bliss. Guests began to arrive, a sea of faces both familiar and foreign, their laughter a stark contrast to the battle raging within me. Sarah's bridesmaids fluttered about, whispers of excitement and joy punctuating the air. I caught glimpses of them, their dresses a cascade of soft hues, but Sarah remained out of sight, a tradition that now felt like a chasm between us. The moment arrived, and I stood at the altar, a statue of composure carved from turmoil. The music swelled, a signal that my bride was on her way, and every eye turned toward the aisle. Then she appeared, a vision in white, her beauty undeniable and her betrayal an invisible shroud. Our eyes met, and for a moment, the world fell away, leaving only the echo of what could have been. The ceremony began, a dance of vows and promises that felt hollow in the shadow of deceit. "Do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the officiant intoned, his words a knife to my heart. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words lodged in my throat, a testament to the war within me. It was then that chaos erupted. A commotion at the back of the gathering drew every gaze, a disruption unbecoming of such a solemn moment. The janitors, the unwitting heralds of my doom, stumbled into view, their entrance a cataclysm that shattered the veneer of perfection. Heard them with my own ears. One bellowed, his voice a grenade in the silence. Sarah's face paled, her eyes wide with fear and guilt. The crowd murmured, a storm of speculation and judgment rising. I stepped forward, my heart a battleground of love and betrayal. "What did you hear?" I demanded, my voice echoing with a mixture of despair and defiance. The janitor's eyes met mine, and in them, I saw the confirmation of my worst fears. "Saw her, with him," he gestured towards Mark, in a way no bride should be with a man not her groom. The air thickened, a tangible cloak of disbelief and shock enveloping us all. Sarah's gaze flickered to Mark, then to me, her lips parting in a silent plea for forgiveness. Mark stood frozen, the mask of the best man crumbling to reveal the architect of my heartache. The ceremony dissolved into chaos, a melange of hushed whispers and pointed fingers. The once celebratory air turned toxic, a poison that seeped into every corner of the estate. I stood at the epicenter, the ground beneath me crumbling. The woman I loved, the friend I trusted, their betrayal a specter that haunted the ruins of my would-be wedding day. The disaster was complete, a perfect storm of heartbreak and humiliation. No vows were exchanged, no rings were worn. Only the bitter taste of betrayal lingered, a reminder of the day my world came crashing down. The wedding day disaster was more than the collapse of a ceremony. It was the unraveling of lives, a tragedy played out under the guise of celebration. And at its heart, I stood, a man betrayed, my dreams of love and fidelity dashed upon the rocks of deceit. The air, once filled with the sweet fragrance of wedding blooms, now felt suffocating, heavy with the sin of betrayal. In the wake of the chaos, the guests had dispersed like leaves in a storm, leaving behind a silence more deafening than the uproar. I stood alone amidst the ruins of what should have been my marriage, my heart a shipwreck in the tempest of deceit. The echoes of the ceremony gone awry haunted the halls, a ghostly reminder of the joy that turned to ashes. As I grappled with the aftermath, Mark approached, his steps hesitant, his presence aflame to my smoldering wrath. "Ethan," he began, his voice a whisper, betraying the guilt that lurked beneath. I turned to him, the hurt and anger a molten core within me. "How could you?" I demanded, each word a hammer striking the anvil of betrayal. "She was my world, and you were my brother in all but blood." Mark flinched, the weight of his actions a visible burden. "I never meant for this to happen," he stammered, his eyes unable to meet mine. "It was a mistake, a moment of folly that I would give anything to undo." "A mistake?" I echoed, my voice rising, a crescendo of disbelief and pain. "You call destroying a lifetime of trust a mistake?" He looked away, the shame a palpable cloak around him. "I was selfish, Ethan. I thought only of the moment, not of the consequences. Not of the brotherhood I was betraying." The words were a cold comfort, a meager balm to the gaping wound in my heart. "And Sarah?" I pressed, the mention of her name a blade twisting within me. Before he could respond, Sarah herself appeared, a specter of the bride I had loved. Her beauty, once a beacon of light in my life, now cast a shadow over my shattered dreams. "Ethan, please," she pleaded, her voice a broken melody. "Let me explain." I stared at her, the woman I had vowed to spend my life with, now a stranger before me. "Explain." I echoed, the word bitter on my tongue. How do you explain the unexplainable? She took a step forward, her hand reaching out, a gesture I couldn't bear. It was a moment of weakness, a lapse in judgment. I was scared, terrified of the commitment, of the forever we were about to embark on. And that justifies your actions? I asked, incredulity lacing my words. Fear drove you into the arms of another man? Her eyes filled with tears, each one a testament to the gravity of her mistake. I love you, Ethan. That has never changed. I was just lost. Lost? I repeated, the word hollow. You found your way well enough. Mark spoke then, his voice a low murmur. I'm to blame too, Ethan. I took advantage of the situation, of her vulnerability. It's on me. The confession, though expected, did nothing to quell the storm within me. You both made your choice, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil. And now, you must live with the consequences. Sarah reached for me again, desperation coloring her features. Ethan, isn't there a way to move past this? To start over? The question hung in the air, a plea for forgiveness, for redemption. But the gulf between us was too wide, the damage too deep. I don't know if I can, I admitted, the truth a heavy chain around my heart. The trust is broken, the love tarnished. How do we rebuild from that? Her sob was the only answer, a sound that echoed in the empty hall, a lament for what was lost. Mark stood silent, a bystander in the wreckage of the bond we once shared. I'll leave you too, he said finally, his departure a relief and a fresh wave of sorrow. Left alone with Sarah, the magnitude of our shattered dreams enveloped me. The crushing truth was that our love, once a towering fortress, lay in ruins, brought low by betrayal and regret. As I faced her, the woman I had loved beyond measure, I realized that some truths were too heavy to bear, their weight a burden that would haunt us forever. The path forward was unclear, shrouded in the mist of pain and forgiveness, a journey we were yet to embark on. In the wake of the revelations, the once majestic estate, a testament to Sarah and my love, now stood as a monument to despair. The guests had vanished like shadows at dawn, leaving a palpable silence in their wake. Amidst the remnants of the celebration that never was, Sarah and I found ourselves adrift in a sea of shattered dreams and unspoken questions. The setting sun cast a golden hue over the scene, its beauty mocking the ugliness of our reality. Sarah, her wedding dress a cruel reminder of what should have been, looked at me with eyes brimming with tears. Ethan, where do we go from here? She whispered, her voice carrying the weight of our broken future. I looked at her, the woman I had envisioned as my partner for life, now the source of my deepest pain. I don't know, Sarah. I truly don't know. The silence that followed was suffocating, each of us lost in our own turmoil. It was then that Mark reappeared, his presence unwelcome yet necessary for the closure we all sought. I'm sorry, Ethan, he began, his voice laden with remorse. I've come to say goodbye. I know there's nothing I can do to undo the harm I've caused. I nodded, the gesture empty of forgiveness. Goodbye, Mark. I hope you find peace with your actions. His departure was a small relief, but it did nothing to mend the gaping wound in my heart. Sarah and I sat amidst the ruins of our would-be celebration, the setting sun casting long shadows over us. Ethan, can we not salvage anything from this? Is there no way back for us? She asked, desperation coloring her tone. I sighed, the weight of her betrayal and my own heartbreak a heavy chain around my soul. How, Sarah? How do we rebuild trust when it's been shattered so completely? Her hand reached for mine, a touch that once brought comfort, now a reminder of our fall. I love you, Ethan. That hasn't changed. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but it doesn't change how I feel about you. I pulled away, the distance between us more than physical. But it changes everything else, Sarah. Love isn't just about feelings. It's about trust, respect, and loyalty. Where do we stand on those? Tears streamed down her cheeks, each one a testament to the depth of our tragedy. I know I've failed you in those aspects, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust, to prove my love to you. The sincerity in her voice tugged at my heart, yet the wound was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. I need time, Sarah. Time to process this, to understand if I can, or even want to move past this. She nodded, her acceptance a silent vow to wait, to fight for us despite the odds. I'll give you all the time you need, Ethan. I'll wait for you. The sun dipped below the horizon, its departure leaving us in the growing twilight, a metaphor for our uncertain future. Around us, the estate lay quiet, a witness to the tumult of emotions that had played out. As night fell, enveloping us in darkness, Sarah and I remained, two souls adrift in the aftermath of a disaster, searching for a way forward through the debris of our shattered dreams. The aftermath of our would-be wedding day left more questions than answers, a labyrinth of pain, betrayal, and the possibility of forgiveness. Yet, within that maze, a glimmer of hope persisted, faint but undying, a beacon guiding us toward an uncertain but inevitable confrontation with the truth of our hearts. The aftermath of the wedding that never was left a void, a silence so profound it echoed through the empty halls of the estate, now devoid of the laughter and joy that were supposed to fill its spaces. In the days that followed, the world seemed to move on, oblivious to the storm that had ravaged my life and my heart. Sarah had moved to her parents' house, a retreat to lick her wounds and perhaps to find a way to piece together the shards of our shattered dreams. I remained in what was to be our home, surrounded by the ghosts of what could have been. It was on a gray, nondescript morning when my phone vibrated with a message from Sarah. "Can we talk?" it read, simple yet loaded with the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, the battle within me raging. Finally, I typed a reply. Yes. We met at the local cafe, a neutral ground laden with memories of simpler times. She was already there, a lone figure at a table by the window, her posture betraying the turmoil within. "Ethan," she greeted, her voice a whisper carried across the small distance between us. "Sarah," I acknowledged, taking the seat opposite her, the chasm of our betrayal an invisible barrier. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she started, her fingers tracing patterns on the table, a nervous habit I'd come to recognize. "About us, about everything that happened." I nodded, signaling for her to continue, my own heart a tight knot of conflicting emotions. "I know I've hurt you, more than words can ever express. And I know saying sorry isn't enough, but I am. Truly, deeply sorry," she said, her gaze meeting mine, a wellspring of sincerity in her eyes. I sighed, the weight of her words heavy on my shoulders. "Sarah, I've been thinking too. About us, about me, about what I want moving forward." She leaned in slightly, a silent plea for me to go on. "I don't know if I can get past this, past what you did. But I also don't know if I want to throw away everything we had, everything we could have been," I confessed, the admission a balm and a blade to my own heart. Her hand reached out across the table, a bridge over the chasm that divided us. Hesitantly, I met her halfway, our fingers touching, a tentative connection in the aftermath of our storm. "Ethan, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. To rebuild, to earn your trust again. I know it won't be easy, but I believe in us, in what we had," she said, her voice firm with conviction. I looked at her, really looked, seeing not just the woman who had betrayed me, but the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who, despite everything, I still loved. "Let's start with honesty," I said after a moment, the decision feeling like stepping off a cliff. Complete, brutal honesty. About what happened, about how we feel, about what we want from each other. Sarah nodded, a tear escaping her eye. "I can do that. I want to do that." And so we talked, for hours it seemed, unraveling the tangled web of emotions, of hurt and love, betrayal and longing. It wasn't easy, the wounds too fresh, the pain too sharp. But it was necessary, a first step on a long road to healing, to understanding. As the cafe around us began to dim, the day giving way to the evening, we stood, our conversation paused but not finished, to be continued in the story of us. "I should go," Sarah said, reluctance coloring her tone. I nodded, the same reluctance mirrored in my own heart. "Yeah, but let's do this again. Talk, I mean." A small smile graced her lips, a glimmer of hope in the dusk. "I like that." And with that, we parted ways, the pieces of our hearts and our relationship scattered around us, a puzzle we were both willing and wanting to solve together. Picking up the pieces wouldn't be easy. The road ahead was fraught with challenges, with moments of doubt and despair. But there was also hope, a fragile, flickering flame that refused to be extinguished. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was enough for now. Days turned into weeks, and the weeks melded into months, each passing moment a step on the path of healing and discovery. The world around me, once gray and lifeless in the aftermath of our would-be wedding, slowly started to regain its color, its vibrancy a reflection of the internal journey I was undertaking. Sarah and I continued to meet, our conversations a tapestry of honesty, pain, and burgeoning hope. Each word spoken was a brick in the rebuilding of the bridge between us, a painstaking process fraught with the fear of collapse but driven by the promise of reaching the other side. It was on one of these days, amidst the backdrop of a cafe that had become our sanctuary, that Sarah broached the subject that had been lingering in the shadows of our conversations. "Ethan," she began, her voice tinged with a hesitancy that piqued my curiosity. I've been thinking a lot about us, about our future. I looked up from my coffee, my heart skipping a beat. And I prompted, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. She took a deep breath, her gaze locked with mine. And I think it's time we consider what moving on looks like for us. Together or apart. The words hung in the air, heavy with implications. Moving on. The concept felt alien, a foreign land we had skirted around but never dared to enter. What are you saying, Sarah? I asked, needing clarification, dreading it at the same time. I'm saying that I love you, Ethan. That hasn't changed. But I also understand if the damage done is too much, if the past is too heavy a burden for us to carry into a future together, she explained, her words a balm and a sting. I sat back, the weight of her admission pressing down on me. Sarah, I started, the words trailing off, lost in the tumult of my emotions. Do you think we can truly move past this, Ethan? Can we really start anew, knowing what we know, feeling what we felt? She pressed, the urgency in her voice mirroring the pounding of my heart. It was the question that had haunted my dreams, shadowed my thoughts. Could we? Should we? I don't know, I admitted, the truth bitter on my tongue. But I do know that I can't imagine my life without you in it. The thought of moving on, of starting over without you, I paused, searching for the words. It's unbearable. Sarah reached across the table, her hand finding mine, a gesture of connection, of shared uncertainty and hope. Then maybe that's our answer, Ethan. Maybe moving on doesn't mean leaving each other behind. Maybe it means moving forward together, scars and all. Her words were a beacon in the fog, a guiding light toward a future I had feared to contemplate. Together, I echoed, the word a pledge, a promise of battles fought side by side, of wounds healed through mutual understanding and love. Yes, together, she affirmed, a smile breaking through the clouds of our conversation, a harbinger of brighter days ahead. As we left the cafe, hand in hand, the road ahead of us was still shrouded in uncertainty. But for the first time, that uncertainty felt like a journey we were ready to embark on together, a path we were willing to navigate with open hearts and minds. Moving on, we realized, wasn't a destination but a process, a continuous journey of healing, learning, and loving. It was a road marked by potholes and detours, but also by moments of breathtaking beauty and profound connection. And as we walked forward, the pieces of our past not forgotten but carried with us, we understood that moving on wasn't about leaving behind what had broken us, but about embracing the possibility of what could mend us. The story of us wasn't over, it was simply entering a new chapter, one filled with the promise of new beginnings and the hope of a love reborn from the ashes of its own undoing.